No matter how well you've put the data science team together, there can often be problems when the data science team is interacting with people outside of the team but within your organization. So this lecture is a little bit about what those problems are and how to deal with them. So the first one is lack of interaction. So this can happen especially if you have a data science team that's standalone, it's on its own, and there's not necessarily a standing or regular commitment to be embedded with or sitting with an external unit. So here, if there's a lack of interaction, you have to identify what the problem is. The problem can either be with the data scientist, they don't know how to contact the person, they don't know what questions to be asking, or it can be with the external unit. So sometimes that lack of communication is because there's nothing to do. So if there's no communication, you need to identify, is this because there's not actually a problem for them to be solving, in which case it's good to repurpose that data scientist's time onto a different project, or to identify, is it because the external person isn't necessarily sending over, hey, we need to have those projections by the end of the week, they're just not contacting the data scientist, or is it because your data scientist is so busy working on their problem that they're not interacting, they're not emailing and contacting the person that they're working with. So again, this will depend a little bit on the scale of the project. If you're building a quick machine learning algorithm, there should be lots of quick interaction. If you're building out a huge scalable infrastructure for data management, it might take a little bit longer before there's interaction with the leadership team about that, and that's to be expected. So if there's this lack of communication, there's a couple of options. You can take a more active role. You can start initiating the conversation. You can send emails that will connect people together. Again, you have to be very mindful of the balance of not interrupting time for data scientists and data engineers. Those sort of uninterrupted moments are when most of the work gets done. And again, if you need to move personnel from a project, whether it's for lack of motivation, lack of good communication, or because there's not really a data science project there to be working on, that's an important part of a data science manager or an executive's job. Another reason is, that you might have to get involved is lack of empowerment. So this often happens if the data scientist is actually embedded in an external team. And so if that happens, often the data scientist will feel a little bit isolated and they might not feel empowered to make decisions. So the external unit is in charge, they have to make some decisions about marketing, or they have to make some decisions about how they're going to take that data and make a decision for product or so forth. And since they don't necessarily make those decisions, they might feel like, I keep presenting my data ideas, I keep showing them experimental results, and they just don't listen. They don't want to answer to those data. They don't want to sort of use the information that I'm presenting. So the first thing that you need to do is understand both sides, because that can happen in one of two ways. One, the person that they're working with, the collaborator they're working with, can just be ignoring their advice, can be ignoring their data analysis. In which case, it's up to you to convince the other person and to sort of take the initiative to explain why this is important, why using the data will help you do a better experiment, will get you better results at the end of the day. On the other hand, it could be because the data scientist is sort of pushing ideas beyond the scope of the data, or they're not getting the data analysis done in a way that's convincing for the external person to sort of look at and interact with. And so you kind of have to understand both sides. And then it's sort of up to the data science manager to take the heat, particularly in a situation where, say, leadership is asking for this machine learning algorithm to be done last week, and your data scientist is telling you, well, it takes 6 weeks to build a machine learning algorithm to do this. Then it's up to the data science manager to collect that information, present it, and take the heat if things aren't going the way that everybody hoped they will take. So one thing that's sort of a common misconception about data science or data engineering is that it's basically instantaneous. Because computers are so fast, people think that also data science or machine learning is really fast to develop. But sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it takes a long time to build a really good machine learning algorithm. And so part of your role is sort of being the intermediate, being the explainer. Why does it take so long? And then providing internal support to your data science team, and whether that's just being an ear for them to talk to, whether it's by suggesting new ideas, and very often it's by identifying when to stop. So data science is data engineering and data science are often areas where perfect is the enemy of the very good. Once you have a pretty good solution, that might be enough to get everything done. And so the data scientist or data engineer, because they have pride in what they're doing, will sort of try to optimize that machine learning algorithm for the last 3% accuracy, or save just a little bit more computing power on the data engineering side. Sometimes that's necessary, but sometimes it isn't, and it's up to the data science manager to sort of pay attention and manage when you're actually solving the data science problem that matters versus when you're chasing something that doesn't maybe necessarily matter. The last problem could be lack of understanding. So this could be because the data science team doesn't understand the problem that they're working on. This commonly happens when data scientists act in a consulting role, when they just one-off see people from your organization who bring like one question: how does this t-test work, or how does this random forest work? Then they might not actually understand the problem, and so they might give advice that isn't very good. Another way that this can work is that the marketing team doesn't understand what data science can do, or the product team doesn't understand what data science can do, or any collaborator doesn't understand what data science can do. And so it's up to you to sort of help make sure that everyone knows what's possible, what's not possible. And then you can do this, you can manage this process in a couple of different ways. One, make sure that if you have a separate dedicated data science team, that they interact with other groups in a regular way, that they're embedded for periods of time. Also, that there's presentations regularly to the organization, both about capabilities and about new techniques and about just what's going on. And then advertising the data science team within the organization. Make sure that everyone knows, oh, that's a problem that the data science team can handle. Or actually, we don't have any data on that, but it'd be cool to collect it. Is that something that we actually need to collect data on? Those are the sorts of roles that can help build understanding within the organization about what data science is and how it can help. So those are a couple of the ways that you can help minimize sort of external conflicts within with the data science team.